All right, Rob. Over to you, mate.
Thank you very much, Travis and Uncle Cole. Just fantastic to hear all the things that Travis just spoke about there, the carp, the getting the cod off the riverbank, all the stocking and all the fantastic work that's been going on. I haven't lived in Victoria for 25 years. I'm up north now, and it's just changed. There's so many good opportunities here now. I want to come fishing and filming down here more often. Just a little bit of background about me. I'm always on the road filming. Just recently, I went off on a shoot. I'm putting my fishing gear in the car, and as I came out through the garage, there's an electrician working on the solar power of my house, and he says, "What do you do?" He didn't know what I did. I explained to him what I do. He's obviously a sparky. I'm a fishing person. Put rods in the car, went back, got cameras. My wife Marilyn comes out with the two kids, and they're fighting about getting to school on time. So he says to me, "You got daughters?" I said, yeah. So I keep loading the car, he keeps fixing the solar. Then up the other end of the house, my two other daughters, I've got four of them, start arguing about something up the other end of the house and yelling and screaming. And he says to me, "You got four of them?" And I said, "Yeah, I actually have." And just at that moment, I close the boot on the car and I'm ready to go. And he looks at me and goes, "You don't even lake fishing, do you?" So it's an escape for everybody. My daughters love it too. It's one of my favourite things. But getting out is, as Travis mentioned, is one of the wonderful things that I get to do, whether it's with my daughters or not. I'm going to jump on the slideshow here, and away we go. So my first memory, that's actually a picture at Lake Eildon. I couldn't find a picture of myself at Lake Eppalock where I caught my first redfin some 47 years ago with my dad, my brothers and my granddad, who was still alive at the time. I can still picture, hear and sense the amazement of that bite on the hand line, that little rattle, and then you pull a live flapping fish out of the deep into the boat. It's just etched on my memory. I've loved freshwater fishing ever since. It was my first experience. I suspect the older members in my family let me catch the most fish that day, and who was to know what they started from there on. And I see kids riding around on bikes with fishing rods and doing that sort of thing, and I think to myself, what a fantastic and healthy activity to get into. It's an amazing thing. I'm just going to squeeze through there. My whole family's been fishing for a long time, and it's my dad and my family that took me to all these places and really helped nurture my love of fishing. Much to the disappointment of my footy and cricket coaches, who we never got to the games on the weekend. We were always out trout fishing or down the bay or whatever we would do. Thanks to my dad and my media career, I've been lucky enough to film around the country for about 35 years, and my absolute favourite fish is these guys. You probably will have guessed, the mighty Murray cod. These are just a few pictures from around the country that I've been lucky to have got in my travels. I moved to Canberra. I grew up in Whittlesea, not far from here, but I moved to Canberra in the 90s, and that's when I got the bug for these giant fish. Back then, they were a mystical creature that you'd hear about. The old timers would tell you about them, but you'd never see them, not even the small ones. And that obsession was just at the time they started to stock fish, and it led to me becoming a full-time native fish guide in Canberra. And I did that for the better part of a decade. I had a screen test for Fishing Australia when I was in Canberra, and they gave me a couple of hours to catch a fish, and that included travel time. So they wanted a pretty spot and they wanted a native fish. They too had heard about these new fish that were making a comeback, just starting to anyway. I reckon from that I was lucky enough to get half an hour fishing time by the time we got up to the lake and got the cameras out and got everything ready. And I was lucky enough to catch a beautiful Murray cod and a couple of golden perch. And I've got to say, whilst I did my homework, I think that was, in the time they gave me, was a little bit more arse than class, I can say that. I've had a brilliant relationship with Win Television ever since. We look after each other. A few years later, I had to push hard to get a TV show going in regional Australia, but we got this guy on Fly, and we outrated the AFL finals around the same time, and it surprised the heck out of me. The TV stations at Win were really happy with it, and as Forrest Gump said, fishing was easy after that. We had sponsorship coming in, And it was all due to the stocking of these fish and the recovery of these fish. Fishing Australia is my main line of work. We regularly film freshwater fishing, but I just finished this project here. Where are we? Oh, sorry, this is that giant cod that we filmed that we originally found stalking a big yellow belly. So the fish you saw earlier is that fish there coming up under a 50 centimetre golden perch. I had to jump in. I think I was called crazy at the time, but now lots of youngsters jump in and have a bit of fun. Give the cod a cuddle, why not? And this is the new project I've been working on. Why would I take time off from Fishing Australia, which is already keeping me very busy, to work on an 85-minute film? Well, I got sick of hearing about the drought. Mainstream media, friends in the cities, friends on the coast, saying, the whole of inland Australia, isn't it dry? Isn't there no water? Aren't all the fish dying? Isn't it on fire? Isn't it a dust bowl? And I'm like, no, I used to get my best fishing in a drought. Look, granted, there's been some terrible fires, and I've got friends and family that are, struggling with droughts and stuff. But what could I do to help those economies and help those towns? Well, highlight that native fish bite well in a drought. Many of the scientists here will know that they're low flow specialists, and if you go looking, as the case here, I haven't been to Shepparton for years, there's cod right here in town, you'll find water, you'll find fish. We filmed in 12 locations from Queensland all the way down to Eildon, and we got the fishing of our lives. So, I just wanted to make sure in the media there was that balance, and I thought, rather than just doing a single Fishing Australia episode, let's make a full film on it, and that's what we did. I'll play a short part of the film later, including a little bit on Lake Eildon, what a fishery it is. Very excited about it. But these are just some of the fish that we caught in our travels. Speaking about drought, what I did was when the VFA said, would you like to do a talk? I said, I'd love to do a talk. Like-minded people, couldn't wait for this. I sat down and I realised I had about 3,000 photos and 40 years worth of memories to go through. So I picked out the ones that I thought might, help you see some of the places I've been and some of the lessons that I've learnt along the way. That's fishing in the desert. They challenged us to go and film fishing out at Lake Eyre. Now, that was when the drought just broke about 12 years ago, and so we wanted to go out to Lake Eyre and check out the fishing out there. And we didn't find water for a long time. We just went driving around and researching, and there's just hundreds of kilometres of that. We got out to a water hole that feeds into Lake Eyre. Permanent water in the middle of the driest continent on Earth. And those, that's a golden perch. You wouldn't know it. They're just a very dark colour. It's a slightly separate breed or species or genetic stock of them, but it's certainly a golden perch. So these guys have survived in the middle of the desert through droughts, just incredible stuff. We went out and we caught more golden perch there than I've probably caught anywhere. This is the same water hole. So the black ones up the top, the locals tell me, live there permanently, and we caught them on vibes. We use steak for bait. It's very popular out there to catch them on steak. The middle-sized one, they think, come just as it started to rain from slightly different waters, and the silver ones on the bottom, they say migrate a fair way. Some even migrate partly across Lake Eyre if there's enough water, fresh water to carry them across the saltwater bit. So we went out there, we had the fishing of our lives, we found these types of fish out there. It's just incredible. On the Cooper River at Burke Street there, at the Cooper Crossing, which is dry for years on end, suddenly you've got golden perch in their thousands. You're catching on a little bit of steak there off the bank. Every drop you've got a golden perch on. And some of the scientist guys were telling me last night they can grow up to half a kilo in 6 months. So they're the same family of fish, but they just grow rapidly fast because they're used to all the shrimp booming out there. Usually I do my homework before I go out. The guy on the end, Rod, he owns the cattle station out there. It's one of the largest in Australia. After we'd caught about 20 golden perch, I said to him, this is awesome. This is some of the best fishing I've ever had. So good you came out here and found this for us. And he said, it's the first time I've fished it. So, and he'd heard they were there, and we went there and caught them. And no, it's just one of those experiences that I'll never forget. So, our native fish are just such survivors. They've survived, massive droughts, massive floods, and they're adaptive. And that ties in with what I said earlier. We're in one of the worst droughts in history, and the experts telling us we're through the worst of it. But these fish are survivors. You come inland Australia, like most people here do, you'll find fish and you'll find good fishing. One of my favourite pictures and one of the most talked about pictures is this guy here. That got nicknamed the Hulk by a few newspapers. A lot of people ask me how big that fish was. Well, I challenge you to try and measure that thing on your own in the middle of the night in a kayak. It's not the easiest thing trying to roll a brag mat out in front of your legs. So all I can say is my kayak's a metre wide and it was hanging over a good 20 centimetres either side. That was one of the best nights fishing I've ever had. That was in Burrinjuck Dam. I got several over a metre that night. It was just one of those nights when I was a fishing reporter in Canberra, we just call it a cod night. And for some reason, whether it be Googong, Lake Burley Griffin, Burrinjuck Dam, Wyangler, there's something in the weather, something made the fish bite. Other people got really good fishing that day and that night too. There was fish boofing ducks 20 metres away, and the little tidal waves that they make would roll towards the kayak. One scared the crap out of me when it hit the rudder pretty hard behind me. It was just one of those nights when the fish switched on and they were all big fish. So that's probably one of my most memorable nights so far. The thing about that night that most people don't know, I probably fished till about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was wearily paddling home. I've sort of been out there since dusk, pretty tired, just paddling along, and sort of half falling asleep. I had about 1.5 k's to paddle back to the car, and just chugging along under some trees, and all of a sudden, bang, in the middle of the kayak, all hell broke. So there's something in my lap going flap, 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 stuff going everywhere. A bloody cormorant had fallen out of the tree, straight into my lap. So as much fun as I had, I said, it's time for me to go home now. I said I just paddled home, but got some great footage that night. There's big fish in every lake if you go looking for them. This is another favourite story of mine. There's a friend of mine, Tom Hallibos, who lives and resides in Canberra. He was fishing for golden perch that day, winding up a tiny little wigglewort lure, which is made for yellow belly. And everyone says in native fishing, fish slow, and if you think you're fishing slow, fish slower. The little wigglewort came in towards his feet near a rock and just popped to the top. He's a seasoned fisherman. He just brought it in gently to his feet, and that thing materialised behind the lure. And rather than wetting his pants, he just held the lure there. And this cod just very, very gently came up and just slurped it off the top. Everyone thinks big cod hit hard. They're big old cagey creatures, I've seen some amazing things where they're like as timid as mice. Like that one we caught on flying Googong, it hit a bunch of worms once and then wouldn't touch worms again for the next 2 months that we tried to catch it. So they're big old creatures. A lot of the times they just grab at the lure very gently. What you're feeling is when they actually get hooked and turn and bolt off. Yeah, sometimes, granted, they'll smack it, and there's no mistaking it. But, they're big, old, clever creatures. There's one fish that I didn't quite get to show to David Attenborough when I was in Canberra, that if it's a little wooden bridge, the fish there are used to the cars driving over the bidgie there. But if you walk across, I don't know if everyone can hear me here. Can you hear me up the back? Yeah. If you walk across the bridge, there's a pet cod we used to have that would come out and do a little circle. It knew you were there, wasn't fussed about the cars, and I must have taken half a dozen people there that said, yeah, sure. I said, wait another hour, he won't come out. You walk back and you come across again. So they've got an incredible sense of feeling. To be able to feel us, when we're up on the bank like that is, they've got senses that we don't understand yet. Uncle Cole, that was up on stage earlier, I had a good chat to him when I was filming on his turf there, and we spoke about things like this. It was fantastic. So, think about, when you're fishing for cod, think about not only, sight and smell, but think about vibration a lot too. You win some, you lose some. Where Tom caught that fish, there's a pool downstream, and there's a tail that's been going around Canberra for a long time of a much bigger fish. And one of the old timers took me out there one night, and I had a big lure with 6x strong hooks. If you're not familiar, they're GT size hooks, really thick, really strong hooks. You struggle to bend them. It was a full moon, it was a beautiful night, and casting my lure out, just winding away slowly. My friend's fishing 20 metres away, and clunk, I'm on. I knew this was a big fish. It just starts swimming slowly up the river. And I look at Phil. Phil looks at me, and he just gave me that nod. That's him. I had heavy gear back then. I was, fishing 60, 70 pound braid and 80 pound leader. And so this thing starts moving up the river. And I'm wondering, it's a contained pool, maybe 100 metres long. And I'm thinking, this thing is massive. It hasn't even, whilst I'm loaded up, it hasn't even woken up yet. And all of a sudden, it's off. And oh, bugger. So I wind the lure in, Phil comes over. I was about to recast. I had a look at the lure. It squashed the trebles inwards. So all three trebles, or two of them mainly, and the third one a bit, had been squashed inwards. So what do you do? Maybe it had it in the corner of its mouth. Oops, sorry. But for that to happen, you can't win them all. So, earlier in the month, my mate catches one on a tiny little yellow belly lure, and there's your two extremes. I recast, it happened a second time. Same thing happened a second time. So, these things have some power in their jaw if they get your lure in the right spot. You can catch them on like you if you get lucky. You can catch, but sometimes they just destroy you. And sometimes you just got to wave the white flag. It's hard. It was very hard for me to accept that, but that happened. Cameramen, where are we? They'll take a nap when you're fishing for giant cod all night. If you bring beer or movies, they'll stay awake a fair bit longer. We had some good times. That's up in Burrinjack. The cameraman I made the movie with, Andrew Barnes, he's a country lad from central New South Wales, loves his native fish. He put in a massive effort. He couldn't be here today, he was away on work, but he just spent hours and hours filming hundreds of surface strikes for us to work with. We learnt so much from watching those slow-mos, cod coming up, slapping you hear about it, but you don't, you sort of see it when you're fishing, but to see it in slow-mo, you sort of see that thing didn't even want the lure. He actually just came up and whacked it with his tail to see what it was. Other times they boil behind it and just push it on a bit. Other times they clean miss it. They want it because they miss it and they come back and they're going for it again. So all the things we learnt from the slow-mos, the pictures in our film tell 1,000 words. So, it's been this past year, as much native fishing I've done in the past, you just keep learning. It's a fantastic thing. This next guy here, Roman Dukovsky, he lived up my way in Canberra. He sent me that pitch. Now, I get lost in a shopping mall like I'm sure a lot of the blokes do here. But when I saw that picture, I said, that looks familiar. We do fish similar spots, but every cod has its fingerprint and its own certain marking. So I sent him a picture back, and lo and behold, we'd both caught the same fish about 6 months apart. In the old days, that fish would have, been taken. And so for a giant fish like that to thrill us twice, and it actually ended up in both our DVDs. That's what catch and release fishing's all about. And another young guy caught the same fish again. So the same fish 3 times has given people that, absolutely amazing experience. So it is so good to see young people and old and everyone in between, releasing these fish these days. That to me sort of gives me goosebumps. It would have been only 30, 40 years ago that fish would have almost been kept for shore and stuck on a wall. if anyone jokes and asks you about the 3 metre cod, like they do the 3 metre flatty, well, there is one. Tell them about the one at Tokenwall. Why have I got a trout picture in there? I've seen some amazing things of native fish over the years and how they react to lures and baits. This is one end of the spectrum. A friend of mine took me trout fishing way up in the snow, where it snows up past Tumbarumba. That's sort of behind Blowering Dam, inland from Tumut there. We were going for trout, and the guy said, there's yellowbelly in the lake, you should have a crack. It was the middle of winter. We all had beanies and trout gear on. And he said, I've got some yabbies, I'll go get them. I said, you're not going to catch a golden perch today. These things are hiding in the weeds, sleeping. So, look, I'll just try, he said. So lo and behold, he went and got a yabby. We threw it out, little paternoster rig. It landed in the middle of the lake, sunk to the bottom. We stuck it in the holder. We're fly fishing for trout, and the bell just went tink once. Everyone said, that's a bite. And I said, it's got to be a turtle or something bumped the line. There's no way that's a golden perch. This fish is trapped well beyond its altitude. It's freezing like we are. Anyway, I said, let's wind it in and check it. So we wound it in, and there's this golden perch just came in like this, just pretty much frozen like we were. Its metabolism shut down, so it must have landed right on the nose. That yabby, that golden perch just was lucky. He got to eat that yabby. I put the poor golden perch back. I thought, you poor thing, you're cold. But he went back in the lake. But that's how much they can shut down. Conversely, vibration of lures. A lot of the places I fish can be murky at times, and people will say, you've got to bait fish. The water's murky, they won't see your lure. There's been a number of occasions where I've wiggled my lure across the top. One particular occasion, I wiggled a little lure with a rattle in it across the snag from here to that chair over there, and then I thought I'll just wind it slow from there. So as it got close to my feet, it had thrown a little wake, and a golden perch popped up 10 metres away in the line of the wake. So it knew the track of where the lure had gone, and it beelined for that lure with vicious intent and smacked the lure at my feet, completely engulfed it. And to my mates and I, we just looked at each other, go, did you see that? So they can feel things, that we don't. I don't know how that this water, you'll be lucky to have 6 inches visibility. Same thing when you're sometimes pulling in a lure and your prop on your motor's still going, and they grab it right near your lure. So they know the difference between something big that's throbbing away and something small and is rattling, and it's something that they are able to eat. And the way I explain that to people is, if you ever go rabbiting, and you hear a rustle in a bush, that's what you're looking for. But if you're in Canada and a bear stood next to you and made a big thump, you're going to jump the other way. So think about vibration as much as you do about colour and shape and depth of lures and stuff as well. I think it's a very interesting and a developing part of fishing. The next slides I've got here, this is up at Googong again, where I spend a lot of time fishing, and you'd think I'd know all. I've got friends fishing there now, learning stuff every day, every year. They're learning more. But this is golden perch breeding. Just one little summer shower in a little gully with really nice riparian vegetation. So that's why we don't want the cattle near the edge. We want that nice vegetation growing right down near the edge, because when it rains, the water gets filtered. These golden perch shot up in there and started breeding, in the space of, it rained that night, and the next day they were up in there. So, when it's time, they can do their thing really quickly. And that's why we need good habitat. If that was a muddy bank, it wouldn't have happened, As you'll hear the scientists talking about, you need that riparian vegetation. It's almost like they sniff it, but more importantly, so those eggs and that survive. The eggs don't survive so well in lakes, as we all know, but that was just an example of how quick it can all happen. I filmed with this guy. We filmed with a number of scientists in our film. This is Dr. Harry Balcombe. He taught us about how far these golden perch can travel, like thousands of kilometres, and how well they adapt. These fish are almost like a white in colour to match that milky water. I'm going to show you that water there. Whilst we mainly caught them on bait, We decided to drive Vibes, much to the locals' sort of dismay. They said, oh, you'll never get one on lure in here. This is in St George, so southern Queensland, about 600k directly west of Brisbane. You might think because of that colour of the water that there's something wrong. Is it farming, or is it something that's happened to the river? That's actually the natural colour of the rivers up there. They have particles in the water that just don't settle really well. They suspend in the water. There's a scientific name for it, but that's the colour of the water. It's just a really milky colour. We started throwing some Vibes around for golden perch with tiny little hooks on them. The guy on the right, Warren Whitaker, is the president of the local fishing club. He said give it a go, so I thought, well, it's pretty murky here. We'll try something with a pretty loud rattle. We got destroyed by 2 big cod. Just came up, grabbed the lures and bent the little yellow belly hooks on us. So these guys now are excited about lure fishing. Interestingly, that water there, when it rains, the local rocks have a chemical in them that acts like a flocculant that you throw in your pool to settle the mud. So those rivers, as muddy as the banks look, they actually clear up when it floods, and the fishing does get even better again if you want to use lures. But never be scared to try a lure in murky water. You do have to slow it up more and give them more time to find it. But if you can catch a cod on a dark moon in the middle of the night, rest assured you'll catch them in murky water as well. Clear water is probably the exception rather than the norm. Fishing's a lot about trying things that, giving them a good go. If you try for 2 minutes in murky water, you're not going to catch one. In my travels around the country, I've been lucky to just turn this thing off. There we go. To learn things. So once again, one of the lakes I fish regularly, I travelled around and learnt about north-blown points when you're barra fishing. When you get a point facing to the north, the water gets warmer. Wind current on a lake, even 15, 20 knots on a lake, can make 2 to 3 knots of current. On an average lake with a reach or a width of, say, about 2 kilometres, the depth on one side can be a metre more than it is on the sheltered side, just because of that wind action. If you ever get to go houseboating on a lake and it's breezy, you can try what I did. You jump in the water, the wind action will actually push you backwards. You have to swim against it. So lakes do have a slight amount of current. What happens with that current when it's blowing from the north, particularly in early spring, late winter? You've got warm water, it's making a current, it pushes bait onto points. They're mad about it in the barra fishing impoundments, and these are the things I've been lucky enough to learn in my travels. We applied that to some lakes that I fished down south, and lo and behold, we started catching fish. We knew they were around that area, but it was one of the triggers. So, there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, but wind can have a huge effect as much as barometer and other things as well. That's just a nice picture I found, so I thought I'd put that up. That's at Windermere. I'm excited about Eildon. It's fast approaching what Windermere is doing in terms of size and numbers. So, like having lived in Whittlesea and worked and studied in Melbourne, to be able to come up the lake there and target these things in spring, that's amazing. Some people say to me, fishing's not brain surgery. Well, some days it is. Both these gentlemen here are brain surgeons, and I guided them one time, and like some days, I love my lure fishing, but some days you've got to give yourself every chance of catching a fish. When I was guiding, I would do a lot of what's called switch baiting, and your customer really wants to catch a fish as much as they can, and you don't know what level they're at in terms of the fly or the lure, how well they can cast, how well they can pause it, retrieve it. So we would always take some little live yabbies with us and have them ready on a rod. And that's a cool thing you can do with kids if you're lure fishing and you start to get fish follow you up. My absolute backup plan, and it had about a 90% sort of conversion rate, would be to flick out an unweighted yabby. Because usually if a native follows your lure up, if he's gone out of his way to follow it up, a lot of the time he's pretty interested. So get a little yabby or a shrimp or a worm in there and make that conversion. And that, often we might get, on average, half a dozen chances a day at a golden perch and maybe 1 or 2 chances of cod on a slow day you might be pushing it. So that day we caught that on lure, but there was 3 or 4 others that we caught on bait earlier to make sure. So, lure fish, but don't be scared to mix it up, particularly if you're going out with the kids. They love having those little yabbies crawling around and having that ready. And like I said, if you can get some runs on the board early, it always helps sort of make the rest of the day go well. Here's a few more of the big fish we caught in the making of our film. They didn't all make the film. There's probably about half a dozen or more meteries that were caught on film, and for some reason the vision wasn't perfect, or the audio wasn't perfect, or we just didn't have room. But these are from 12 locations we filmed between Queensland and Eildon. That's in the earlier DVD, that one. A lot of these fish I caught at night, often because they bite better at night, or I didn't want to give away a friend's spot, just as a bit of courtesy. So these are just some of the fish that have popped up, and some are older pictures, but most of these are in the movie. Once again, just wrestling one aboard there on the kayak. But it's, as you all know, probably, it's not just about size. Like, I have probably more fun catching smaller fish in numbers, get to rivers and creeks and lakes when they're firing. And this was up in New England with Dr. Dean Gilligan, who's helping with the carp program. And that was my first visit to New England. We filmed a fair bit in New England this time round. And you've got fisheries that are starting to develop here because of the river restoration, because of the stocking, because of the anglers' attitude towards release. So you're going to get that sort of fishing down here, and it's well and truly on its way. And the acid test for me with the movie was playing it to my younger daughters, and that's the bit they like the most. Yeah, sure, they oohed and ahed about the giant fish, but the ones that they liked the most was to see those surface strikes and to see that you had to cast out to a snag. And that's a challenge for kids. They like that. They're active, At a certain age, you've got to use bait to keep them interested, or because they want to read a book or listen to music or whatever. But the whole fact that you can have that challenge of casting a lure to a snag, that really engages kids. So I'm excited about the fisheries and coming back, even fishing here around Shepparton. And then, of course, you can't go without mentioning these guys, the Eildon fish. Probably the best specimens that I've seen. And I think the VFA and have put an amazing sort of program together to stock that lake. The people they got us to fish with, a couple are here in the audience today, including Mick Caulfield, and Darren Weeder was with us, and John Carhill, who's here today doing a talk later today. They took us out on the lake and showed us some things, and I was gobsmacked by the clarity of the water, the habitat, just the quality of the fish, the markings. So you got markings of clear water upland fish there, combined with the condition of a lake fish. That's something. So once you've caught lots of fish in the river and had some fun, and you want to go and chase a big one, it's just something that you can spend time and do, and have some good time with mates doing that. The thing I like about Eildon, it's so big. Even in a drought, even if it gets low, you're still going to be able to find places to yourself. Those little out-of-the-way bays where you can fish and know that you've got it to yourself. The new sounders of all brands are really helping. Now you can distinguish between a carp and a cod and get to work on them. And a good strategy that I use, whatever lake that I fish, is to identify half a dozen spots where there's big fish and come back and hit them at prime time, dawn, dusk, maybe 2 hours after I've just hit them, and into the night as well. Knowing that they're there, I mean, they will cruise around the lake, but knowing that there's one there really means it's game on. And once again, I just, got to say that they're a fish to behold. I'm going to sneak up there for work tomorrow to have another crack at them. I loved it so much. So I'll have a tiny little bit of a chat after the movie, but it's onto the film now. This is just a little sneak peek of some of the places we went to. The movie's 85 minutes long. We do have it available out in the foyer. And we've got a part of the Eildon chapter for you to look at here now. So I'm going to call Taylor up to play that. Enjoy this sneak peek at the movie. And we might have to just dim the lights quickly, if that's okay.
Got it, good work. Got him this time.
Back at Glen Lyons, I've seen some absolutely giant cod migrating long distances along the bank here. So that's where I'm going to troll and hope to intercept one. A big deep diver on here. It's a mud-eye lure. It's got a nice tail on it that wiggles in the water. Strong Aussie made lure. Got a lot of big cod on that. The 6X strong hooks still get bent up, but a lot of confidence in this guy. I'm going to get it down about 3 or 4 metres and hug the bank. Keep my eye on the sounder and cruise along. To turn my headlamp off here and go to night vision on the camera because I'm getting a bit of night blindness from the lamp and some bugs are building up. That's better. Massive. Absolute behemoth. The head. So now it's got to back the bag off. Big tail slap. Wait for it. I've got to get one hand under the belly. And then, there we go. Just stupidly big. Oh my God. The Hobie's 1.20 meters, and this thing is hanging over 20 centimetres either side. Look at that. The tail of this beast. All right, you go, big girl. Ready to go? You turn around. You turn around. There she goes. If you fish for him, you know what it takes. Lake Eildon is one of Australia's most exciting new Murray cod fisheries. It has a surface area of 138 square kilometres, with crystal clear water loaded with fish habitat. Just 2 hours from Melbourne. Victorian fisheries and recreational licence fees have seen over 2 million Murray cod and close to 2 million golden perch stocked since 2010.
Got him. Yay.
Small one. Small one. It's not,
Off the
off
surface.
the surface is always good, isn't it? Like, always good to get a fish off the surface. It's awesome how we've turned this into such a brilliant trophy fishery so close to Melbourne.
Yeah.
Awesome.
There's guys in here that can eat this fish whole.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll see one, but it's just, I mean, even at that size, they're amazing.
Just a pretty little fish. That's only a baby for here, but awesome.
Yeah, nice. Beautiful Eildon fish. So healthy. All right, I'm going to bring him in and we'll have a quick look at him and yeah, then we'll get him back in the water. Oh, here he is. Plenty of support. Look after these guys. So healthy. All right, we'll keep him wet and we'll get him straight back in the water. Really look after these big fish. There you go, mate.
So what we've got going on here at the moment is our spring pulse down the Goulburn River and also the Murray. So it's coming out of Lake Eildon for the Goulburn and Lake Hume. And it flows down the Murray and it's actually joined up and it's coming down through the system, down through this mid-Murray area at the moment. What we're trying to do is trying to mimic what would have occurred prior to the dams being in place. So naturally the water and the snow would have come down out of the mountains and raised the level of the river naturally, which is a trigger and a pulse then for native fish to actually spawn. And we know that too because of the monitoring that we do with our watering events actually shows that watering done at the right time of the year will actually trigger spawning for native fish, which is absolutely fantastic. And that has benefits then for you know, the communities that live along the river. I like to get out, fish, and enjoy the river, so it's great. Righto, we've got one on here. What we got here? Oh, a little beauty, little silver perch. Look at that one. By the look of him, I'd say he probably spawned last year. By the look of him, just the size of him. We've only been here for 5 minutes, and I'd say that we've had half a dozen taps every time we put the worm in the water. So there's obviously thousands of these little fellas in here, which is a really good sign of the health of the river and how important it is for flows at the right time of the year.
That a hit? Yeah, that's a hit. He's on. There you go. Oh, yes, no? Not sure. What do you reckon? It's one of those calls, isn't it, when you're in the spindles like that. So we've just seen a big cod on the sounder and it's right amongst some timber and it's bumping your way through it. So we're on edge, but you got to hit everything, don't you, Mick? It really did feel like a fish. I wouldn't be surprised if one of us get clunked in the next 5 minutes.
Yep.
I got that reel.
It's
Feeling?
Clunky feeling.
Got him, yep, got him. Oh yeah, got him.
Feels like a bit of weight.
Yeah.
What we were just saying.
Oh, mate, you can just about taste it. Oh, it's tough. Like, you got to go at it, but when it happens, it's as good as it gets. He's not a big fish, but
Chunky little fish.
mate, he's only
How good's that?
my first eel and cod.
Well done.
It's already special.
Yep.
And this place is going to be something for years to come.
It is.
It's like she's only about 70 centimetres, but look at the condition.
Yeah.
And it's got the markings of your beautiful upland cod that you see around New England, the beautiful clear streams up there, but the condition of a lake fish.
Not a parasite on it. It's a clean fish.
Mate.
Beautiful.
One of the best conditioned cod I've ever seen. I've heard about it.
Yep.
I read about it, and now I'm here doing it. Look at that.
That's marvellous, isn't it?
Getting back in the water.
The river is relatively uniform and the flow more or less at a stable state through here. But once it hits the floodplain, you've got a whole range of different creeks and branches, some really flat water. You know, you've just got a massive range of habitats, both in flow, depth, water quality. The range of fish that spawn in a channel are actually quite different from the number that often spawn within the forest. And we know that when we have good river and floodplain connectivity, we're actually getting the fish coming through and ultimately into those big whoppers that people target with fishing.
Yep. Yes. Oh, so good. Yeah, beautiful fish. All right, keep him wet, keep him supported, and we'll get him back in the drink.
Australia's native fish have been decimated over the past 200 years, almost to extinction. Now, they are making a comeback. On the planet's driest continent, where water is everything, these breathtaking creatures are working together with mankind for a sustainable future.
It's fantastic to meet some of the people who've been instrumental in the comeback of Murray cod. So a few of those guys here today. So I'd just like to say to all the river care volunteers, the stockists, the local fishing clubs and the people that get down there and everyone that helps these fish with their comeback, I just want to give you a big clap from me. I'll be at the front on the table there next to Anthony and the guys signing some DVDs and stuff like that. But I'd also just like to quickly thank everyone from the VFA and everyone that made the conference possible. It's just been a wonderful experience to come down with so many like-minded people, and it's a really, really well-run event. So just thank you very much. That's it for me. Thank you. Oh, okay. That's it? All right, thank you again.